My family always dismissed my career until I snapped and said, "You've made it crystal clear that what I do is frivolous." They had no idea how much damage they'd done. I'm Maya, 24, female, and I finally told my brother and sister exactly what I think of their entitled, arrogant behavior after years of being treated like the family disappointment. The thing is, I've been the invisible middle child for as long as I can remember. While Derek, my 27-year-old brother, and Vanessa, my 22-year-old sister, have always been the golden children in my parents' eyes, I've been the one scrambling for scraps of attention and validation. And honestly, I'm done pretending it doesn't hurt. Let me paint you the picture of how things have always been in the Chen household. Derek is the successful real estate agent who can do no wrong. He's got the fancy car, the expensive suits, and the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no by our parents. Vanessa is the college princess studying business, following in Derek's footsteps, with her designer clothes and endless social media posts about her amazing life. Then there's me, Maya, the graphic designer who apparently chose the wrong career path according to everyone in my family. I remember when I was 18 and got accepted into art school, I was so excited, thinking finally my parents would see that I had talent, that I had a future in something I was passionate about. Instead, when I told them over dinner, Derek laughed and said, "Art school? That's not a real education, Maya. You're basically paying to play with crayons." Vanessa giggled along with him, and my parents just sat there, saying nothing. When it came time to discuss tuition, suddenly there was no college fund for me like there had been for Derek. "Art school is expensive, and we're not sure it's a wise investment," my dad said. Meanwhile, they were already planning to pay for Vanessa's business degree in full, so I took out loans, lots of them, while Derek graduated debt-free, and Vanessa enjoys her college experience without a care in the world. I've been paying off my education for the past 6 years. Every month, when I send in that loan payment, I remember sitting at that dinner table feeling like my dreams were worth less than my siblings. The pattern continued through college. When Derek got his real estate license and sold his first house, we had a family celebration dinner. When Vanessa made Dean's List her first semester, we went out for fancy brunch. When I graduated summa cum laude from art school and immediately landed a job at a well-respected design firm, crickets. "That's nice, honey," was all my mom said. Derek actually asked if I was going to get a real job soon or if I was planning to keep playing on computers forever. But the thing that really broke my heart happened 2 years ago during Christmas. We were all gathered around the tree, opening presents. Derek had just bought his first house and was showing everyone pictures on his phone. "Look at this kitchen," he kept saying. "I worked so hard for this." Vanessa was talking about her internship at some big company and how they might offer her a job after graduation. When it was my turn to share what was happening in my life, I mentioned that I'd just been promoted to senior designer and was working on a campaign for a major brand that would be seen by millions of people. Derek looked up from his phone and said, "That's cute, Maya, but when are you going to do something that actually matters? Making pretty pictures isn't exactly changing the world." The room went quiet for a second, and I waited for someone, anyone, to defend me, to point out that Derek sells houses and that's not exactly curing cancer either. But no one said anything. Vanessa just nodded along, and my parents quickly changed the subject to ask Derek about his commission on his latest sale. That night, I went home to my apartment and cried, not just because of what Derek said, but because of the silence that followed, because after 22 years of watching my siblings get praised for everything while I got dismissed, I realized that my family genuinely believed I was less important than them. The dismissiveness became a constant theme. At family gatherings, Derek would introduce me to his friends as my sister, who does computer stuff. Vanessa would post pictures of family events on Instagram, but somehow always managed to crop me out or post the ones where I looked awkward. My parents would ask Derek about his sales goals and Vanessa about her grades, but when they asked me about work, it felt like they were just being polite. I started dreading family events. Every birthday, every holiday, every casual family dinner became an exercise in feeling invisible. Derek and Vanessa had this way of talking about their lives like they were the main characters in some important story, while I was just ... there. Background noise. The sister who made nice pictures for a living? What hurt the most was how they talked about success. To them, success meant money, status, and doing things that other people immediately understood and respected. Derek made good money selling houses. That was success. Vanessa was studying business and networking with future executives. That was success. I was using my creativity to help brands connect with customers and tell their stories. That was just playing around. The irony is that I actually love my job. I'm good at it too. I've won awards, My work has been featured in design magazines, and I make a decent living doing something that fulfills me. But none of that mattered to my family because it wasn't their definition of success. So when my mom called last week to invite me to another one of Derek's celebration dinners, this time for his biggest sale yet, I almost said no. But something in me decided to go one more time. Maybe because I hoped things would be different. Maybe because I still had this naive belief that my family would eventually see me for who I really am. I had no idea that this dinner would be the night everything finally came to a head. The week leading up to Derek's celebration dinner was particularly rough for me. Work had been intense. I was managing 3 major client projects simultaneously, including a complete rebrand for a startup that had just secured major funding. I'd been putting in 12-hour days, surviving on coffee and determination, trying to meet impossible deadlines, but the project was important to me. This startup was creating educational technology to help underprivileged kids access quality learning resources. It wasn't just another corporate gig, it was work that actually mattered, work that could change lives. The kind of work that Derek claimed I never did. I'd been excited to tell my family about it, thinking maybe this time they'd see that my career was meaningful. The client had specifically chosen our firm because of my portfolio, and my boss had told me this project could lead to a creative director position. For once, I felt proud of what I was accomplishing. But as the week went on, I kept getting these little reminders of how my family viewed me. Derek texted the family group chat with photos of his latest listing, a massive house with a pool and a 3-car garage. Another day, another dollar, he wrote, followed by money emojis. The responses were immediate. Heart eyes from Vanessa, so proud. From Mom, that's my boy. From Dad. 2 days later, Vanessa posted on the family chat about getting an A on her finance exam. More celebrations, more praise. You're going to run a Fortune 500 company someday. Dad wrote back, I almost shared news about my project then, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the memory of all the times I'd shared good news only to have it dismissed or ignored. Maybe I was just tired of feeling like I had to prove myself to people who had already decided I wasn't worth their respect. Instead, I threw myself deeper into my work. I stayed late every night that week, perfecting every detail of the rebrand. The logo, the color palette, the messaging strategy, everything had to be perfect. My coworker James kept telling me to go home, that I was pushing myself too hard, but I couldn't stop. This project felt like my chance to prove that what I did mattered, even if my family couldn't see it. The night before Derek's dinner, I finally finished the presentation for the startup client. As I sat in my quiet office, looking at the work spread across my computer screens, I felt a mix of exhaustion and pride. The rebrand was beautiful, professional, and meaningful. It told a story about hope and opportunity and the power of education to change lives. It was some of the best work I'd ever done. I took a screenshot of the final logo design and almost posted it to the family group chat. My finger hovered over the send button for a full minute, but then I imagined Derek's response, probably something about how cute it was, and I deleted the message instead. That night, I had trouble sleeping. I kept thinking about the dinner, about sitting around that familiar table, listening to Derek talk about square footage and commission rates while everyone hung on his every word. I thought about Vanessa discussing her sorority events and internship plans like they were matters of national importance. And I thought about myself, sitting there with my own accomplishments that never seemed to count for anything. I'd been having these thoughts more and more lately about whether my family actually loved me or just tolerated me, about whether I was the problem. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I expected too much. But then I'd remember specific moments, like when Derek told his friends I played with computers, or when Vanessa excluded me from her graduation photos. And I knew it wasn't just in my head. The morning of the dinner, Mom called me. Maya, honey, make sure you dress nicely tonight. Derek's bringing his new girlfriend, and we want to make a good impression. Of course, I said, though something about the comment stung, as if I didn't always dress appropriately for family events, as if my appearance might somehow embarrass the family in front of Derek's girlfriend. And maybe don't talk too much about work tonight, she continued. I know you're passionate about your art projects, but let's keep the focus on Derek's success. This is really a big deal for him. I hung up feeling deflated. Don't talk too much about work, as if my career was an embarrassing hobby that might detract from Derek's moment. When was the last time anyone had told Derek or Vanessa not to talk about their achievements? I spent the afternoon getting ready, choosing my outfit carefully. I settled on a black dress that was professional but not too formal, paired with a blazer that I'd bought to celebrate my recent promotion. As I looked At myself in the mirror, I practiced what I might say if anyone asked about my life. Maybe I'd mention the startup project after all. Maybe tonight would be different. But as I drove to my parents' house, that familiar feeling of dread settled in my stomach. The same feeling I got before every family gathering, the anticipation of being overlooked, dismissed, or made to feel small. I'd been dealing with this feeling for so long that it almost felt normal now, like putting on an uncomfortable piece of clothing that I'd learned to tolerate. I pulled into the driveway behind Derek's BMW and sat in my car for a moment, gathering courage. Through the front window, I could see everyone already gathered in the living room, Derek animated and gesturing, Vanessa laughing at something he'd said, Mom and Dad beaming with pride. They looked like a complete family already, like adding, me too. The mix was just a formality. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed the bottle of wine I'd brought and walked toward the front door. I had no idea that in a few hours, I'd finally reach my breaking point and say all the things I'd been holding back for years. All I knew was that I was tired of feeling like a stranger in my own family, and something had to change. The question was, would I have the courage to make it happen? Walking into my parents' house that evening felt like stepping into a familiar movie that I'd seen too many times before. The living room was decorated with Mom's latest attempt at interior design. She'd been watching those home improvement shows again, and the dining room table was set with the good china that only came out for special occasions, which, let's be honest, usually meant occasions celebrating Derek or Vanessa. Maya, Derek called out as soon as I walked in, though he didn't get up from his spot on the couch where he was holding court. There she is, the artist in the family. There was that word again, artist said with just enough condescension to make it clear he didn't quite take it seriously. Vanessa looked up from her phone long enough to wave. Hey sis, love your dress. Very, professional. The pause before professional spoke volumes. In Vanessa's world, where image was everything, my outfit was apparently trying too hard. Maya, sweetie, you look lovely, Mom said, taking the wine from me with a quick hug. Derek was just telling us about his latest sale. Did you know he made more in commission last month than most people make in 3 months? Isn't that incredible? Incredible, I echoed, settling into the only remaining seat, the slightly uncomfortable chair at the end of the table that somehow always ended up being mine. Dad was beaming as he looked at Derek. 28% above asking price. In this market, that takes real skill. Derek leaned back with that confident smile I knew so well. It's all about reading the clients, knowing what they really want versus what they think they want. Psychology, really? I've got a gift for it. You certainly do, agreed a new voice. I turned to see a tall woman with perfectly styled blonde hair emerging from the kitchen with Mom. This had to be Derek's new girlfriend, Stephanie. She looked exactly like the type of woman Derek usually dated, polished, expensive-looking, and probably impressed by his success. Stephanie, this is my daughter Maya, Mom said. She's the creative one in the family. Oh, how fun, Stephanie said with a kind of enthusiasm people usually reserved for children's hobbies. What kind of art do you do? Painting? Pottery? I'm a graphic designer, I explained. I work for a marketing firm, doing branding and visual identity for companies. That sounds interesting, Stephanie replied, though her attention was already drifting back to Derek. Derek told me you design logos and things like that. Among other things, yes. I was about to elaborate, maybe mention the startup project I'd been working on, when Derek jumped in. Maya makes things look pretty for businesses, he said with a laugh. It's like being a professional decorator, but for companies instead of houses. The casual dismissiveness in his tone hit me like a slap. A professional decorator, as if my years of education, my understanding of brand strategy, consumer psychology, and visual communication could be reduced to making things look pretty. Well, that's nice, Stephanie said absently, clearly having filed my profession under not important enough to think about further. Vanessa looked up from her phone again. Speaking of work, guess what happened in my marketing class this week? Professor Williams used my case study presentation as an example for the whole class. He said it showed exceptional strategic thinking for an undergraduate. That's wonderful, honey. Dad practically glowed with pride. What was the case study about? As Vanessa launched into a detailed explanation of her analysis of some company's advertising campaign. I felt that familiar sinking feeling. Here we were again, Vanessa getting praised for studying marketing while I actually worked in marketing, and somehow her academic exercise was more impressive than my professional reality. That's the kind of thinking that's going to take you far in the business world, Derek said approvingly. Real strategic analysis, not just making things look nice. There it was again. The implication that what I did was superficial, decorative, less than. I wanted to point out that brand strategy was exactly what Vanessa had presented on, that I did that kind of analysis every day for real clients with real money at stake. But I'd learned over the years that defending my career only made me look desperate and insecure. "Dinner's ready," Mom announced, saving me from having to respond. We moved to the dining room, where Mom had prepared Derek's favorite meal, steak, mashed potatoes, and asparagus. The conversation continued to revolve around Derek's success as we ate. He regaled us with stories about difficult clients, challenging negotiations, and his growing reputation in the local real estate market. "The Hendersons specifically asked for me," he said, cutting into his steak. "Word is getting around that I'm the guy who gets results. I'm thinking of starting my own agency soon." "That's ambitious," Dad said, clearly impressed. "Your own business now, that's the American dream right there." "I've actually been thinking about it for a while," Derek continued. "Real estate is all about relationships and reputation. I've got both now. Plus, I understand what clients really need, not just what they think they need." Stephanie nodded enthusiastically. "Derek has such good instincts about people. It's like he can read their minds." I took a sip of wine and tried to ignore the growing irritation in my chest. Derek had good instincts about people. This was the same person who had never once asked me how I was really doing, who consistently failed to notice when his comments hurt me, who seemed incapable of understanding that other people's careers might be just as valid and challenging as his own. "What about you, Maya?" Stephanie asked suddenly, and I realized I'd been quiet for too long. "Are you thinking about starting your own business too? Like a freelance art thing?" "I actually love working at my firm," I said carefully. "We handle some really interesting clients, and I'm working toward a creative director position. Plus, I like collaborating with the team." "That's nice," Derek said, though his tone suggested it wasn't particularly impressive. "Steady paycheck? I get it. Not everyone's cut out for the entrepreneurial life. It takes a certain kind of person to take those risks." The implication was clear. I wasn't that kind of person. I was playing it safe, lacking ambition, content with my little employee job while he was out there being a real business owner. "Actually," I said, feeling a spark of defiance, "I just finished working on a really meaningful project, a rebrand for an educational technology startup that's trying to help underprivileged kids access better learning resources. The client specifically chose our firm because of my portfolio." "That's sweet," Vanessa said, not looking up from her phone. "Like helping kids and stuff." "It is helping kids," I said, my voice a little sharper than I intended. "The company is developing platforms that could reach millions of students who don't have access to quality educational materials." "Well, that sounds very altruistic," Derek said with a slight smile. "Though I imagine the pay isn't great on those kinds of projects. Nonprofits and startups usually have pretty tight budgets for marketing, right?" And there it was, the automatic assumption that because my project had social value, it must not have financial value. Because in Derek's world, the only measure of success that mattered was how much money you made. "Actually, it's a well-funded project," I said evenly. "And even if it weren't, some things are worth doing because they matter, not just because they pay well." Derek raised an eyebrow. "Sure, but at the end of the day, you've got those student loans to pay off, right? Can't eat good intentions." The comment hit exactly where he intended. A reminder that while he graduated debt-free thanks to our parents, I was still paying for my education. A suggestion that I couldn't afford to be idealistic about my career choices. I felt my jaw clench. But before I could respond, Mom jumped in with her bright, peacekeeper voice. "Well, I think it's wonderful that Maya is helping children. And, Derek, we're so proud of how well you're doing with your sales. You're both successful in your own ways, but we weren't both successful in their eyes, and we all knew it." Derek was successful. I was, sweet, helpful, doing my best with my little creative hobby job. As the conversation moved on to Vanessa's upcoming sorority formal and Derek's plans for expanding his client base, I found myself retreating inward. I mechanically ate my dinner and made appropriate responses when directly addressed, but inside, I was reaching a boiling point I didn't even realize had been building. This was my family. These were the people who were supposed to love and support me unconditionally. And yet, sitting at this table, I felt more alone and misunderstood than I did anywhere else in the world. Something was about to break. I could feel it building inside me like pressure in a volcano. And when it finally erupted, there would be no taking it back. The explosion came during dessert. Mom had brought out Derek's favorite chocolate cake, the same one she'd been making, for his birthday since he was 10, and we were all sitting around pretending this was a normal, happy family gathering. Derek was telling another story about how he'd managed to talk a seller into accepting a lower offer than they wanted, spinning it like he was some kind of master negotiator rather than someone who'd pressured people into a decision they didn't feel good about. The key, he was saying, gesturing with his fork, is making them understand that they need you more than you need them. It's all about leverage. That's so smart, Stephanie gushed. You're like a business psychologist or something. Vanessa nodded eagerly. Derek's always been good at reading people. Remember in high school when he convinced that kid Marcus to trade his rare baseball card for Derek's regular one? Derek made him think the regular one was actually worth more. Everyone laughed like this was a charming anecdote instead of a story about Derek manipulating someone. I felt my grip tighten on my water glass. That's different, Derek said with false modesty. That was just kid stuff. This is professional negotiation. It's about understanding market psychology and human behavior. Not everyone has the instincts for it. Certainly not everyone, Dad agreed, beaming at his son. It takes a special kind of intelligence to succeed in sales, a combination of analytical thinking and people skills. I couldn't help myself. As opposed to what? The table went quiet. Dad looked confused by my question, but I could see Derek's eyes narrow slightly. What do you mean? Dad asked. You said it takes special intelligence to succeed in sales, I said, keeping my voice level. I was wondering what you think doesn't require analytical thinking and people skills. There was an uncomfortable pause. Mom jumped in quickly. Oh, Maya, your father didn't mean, actually, I'm curious too, I continued, looking directly at Derek. Since you're all such experts on reading people and understanding psychology, I'd love to know what you think I do all day. Derek set down his fork and leaned back in his chair. Maya, why are you getting defensive? No one said anything about your job, didn't you? Because for the past 2 hours, I've heard about how Derek has special intelligence and exceptional strategic thinking and real business instincts. Meanwhile, every time my career comes up, it gets dismissed as making things pretty or computer stuff or playing with art. That's not, Vanessa started, but I cut her off. Actually, Vanessa, you're part of this too. You get praised for doing a class presentation on marketing strategy, while I do marketing strategy for actual companies with actual budgets, and somehow your homework assignment is more impressive than my career. Vanessa's face flushed. I was just sharing something that happened at school. I wasn't trying to, you weren't trying to, what? Make me feel like what I do doesn't matter. Because that's exactly what happens every time we get together. Derek sells houses and he's a business genius. You analyze a case study and you're destined for greatness. I create brand identities that help companies connect with millions of customers. And I'm just the creative one who makes things look nice. The room was dead silent now. Stephanie looked like she wanted to disappear, and my parents were staring at me like I'd started speaking in tongues. Derek's expression had shifted from confused to annoyed. Okay, Maya, I think you're overreacting here. No one's attacking your career. We're just having a family dinner. Overreacting, I felt something snap inside me. Derek, do you have any idea what I actually do for work? Any idea at all? Of course I do. You design logos and websites, and that's like saying you show people houses. I develop comprehensive brand strategies. I research target demographics and analyze consumer behavior. I create visual systems that communicate complex messages and influence purchasing decisions. I work with million-dollar budgets and help companies position themselves in competitive markets. But somehow, when you do market analysis, it's sophisticated business strategy. When I do it, it's making things pretty. Derek's jaw tightened. Look, Maya, I'm not saying your job ISN single quotes T. Fine, but let's be honest here. I close deals that determine whether families can buy their dream homes. Vanessa is studying to work in corporate strategy, making decisions that affect entire companies. What you do is, it's marketing support. It's important. Sure, but it's not exactly. What? My voice was rising now, and I didn't care. Not exactly important. Not exactly challenging. Not exactly a real career. I didn't say that. You didn't have to say it. You've been saying it for years. Every family gathering, every conversation, every casual comment about my computer stuff or my art projects. Do you want to know something, Derek? That startup I mentioned, the one working on educational technology, they're paying our firm more for this rebrand than you made on your last 3 sales combined. But I'm sure that's just me playing with pretty pictures, right? Derek's face was getting red now. Fine, Maya. You make good money. Congratulations. But money isn't everything. What I do actually helps people achieve their dreams. I help families find homes. That's meaningful work. I stared at him in disbelief. And helping kids access education isn't meaningful. Creating platforms that could change the trajectory of children's lives isn't meaningful. You help people buy houses, Derek. I help people tell stories that connect with other human beings. We both do important work, but somehow only yours counts. Maya, honey, please calm down, Mom said, reaching across the table toward me. This isn't necessary. We're all family here. I pulled my hand away. Are we, Mom? Because family members are supposed to support each other. They're supposed to celebrate each other's successes. They're supposed to take an interest in each other's lives. When was the last time anyone at this table asked me about a project I was excited about? When was the last time anyone acknowledged something I accomplished? We do support you, Dad said weakly. Really? When I graduated summa cum laude, Derek asked if I was going to get a real job. When I got promoted to senior designer, Vanessa asked if that meant I was finally making decent money. When I mentioned the startup project tonight, you all acted like I was volunteering at a charity out of the goodness of my heart instead of landing a prestigious, well-paying client because of my professional reputation. Vanessa was looking down at her plate now, but Derek was leaning forward, his fake calm starting to crack. You know what, Maya? Maybe the reason we don't take your job seriously is because you're always so defensive about it. If you were really confident in what you do, you wouldn't need constant validation from everyone else. That was it. The last straw. Defensive? I stood up so fast, my chair scraped against the floor. I'm defensive because I've spent my entire adult life watching my family dismiss everything I do while celebrating the exact same skills when my siblings demonstrate them. I'm defensive because every time I try to share something I'm proud of, it gets minimized or ignored. I'm defensive because I'm tired of being the family disappointment when I'm actually really good at what I do. No one said you were a disappointment, Mom said, but her voice lacked conviction. You didn't have to say it, Mom. It's in every conversation we have. Derek sells a house. We have a celebration dinner. Vanessa gets an A on a test. We go out for brunch. I land the biggest client of my career, and you tell me not to talk about work tonight because it might overshadow Derek's moment. Mom's face went pale. I didn't mean yes. You did. You meant exactly that. And you know what the really sad part is? I kept coming to these dinners hoping things would change. Hoping that eventually, you'd see that what I do matters too. But you never will you? Because you've already decided that Derek is the successful one. Vanessa is the smart one, and I'm just what? The artistic one. The creative one. The one who plays with computers. Derek stood up too, his composure finally cracking completely. Okay, you want honesty, Maya? Fine, yes. Vanessa and I have more traditional careers. Yes, we make more money. Yes, what we do is easier for people to understand and respect. That doesn't make us bad people, and it doesn't make you a victim. Traditional careers, I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Derek, you sell houses? There's nothing traditional about acting like that makes you superior to someone who works in one of the largest industries in the world. And Vanessa, you're 22 years old and still in college. You don't have a career yet. You have homework. Vanessa's head snapped up, tears in her eyes. That's not fair, Maya. I'm working really hard at school, and I have plans. I'm sure you do. And when you graduate and get a job, I'll be happy to celebrate your actual accomplishments instead of your potential ones. But right now, you're a student who's never had a real job acting like you, understand? Professional success better than someone who's been working for 6 years? The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my own heart pounding in my ears, could see the shock and hurt on everyone's faces. Part of me wanted to take it all back, to sit down and apologize and pretend everything was fine, but a bigger part of me felt lighter than I had in years. I'd finally said it. All of it. Every resentment, every hurt feeling, every moment of being dismissed or overlooked. It was out there now, hanging in the air between us like a bridge that had been burned. Derek was the first to speak, his voice cold and controlled. Well, Maya, I guess we know how you really feel about your family. No, Derek, I said quietly. Now you know how I feel about the way my family treats me. There's a difference. And with that, I picked up my purse and walked toward the front door, leaving behind the stunned silence and the chocolate cake and the family dinner that had finally catastrophically become honest. I made it halfway to my car before Derek caught up with me. Maya, wait, he called out, jogging down the driveway in his expensive loafers. You can't just drop a bomb like that and leave. I turned around to face him, my heart still racing from the adrenaline of finally speaking my mind. Actually, Derek, I can. I've been sitting through these dinners for years, biting my tongue, while you and Vanessa act superior. I'm done, act superior. Derek's voice pitched higher with indignation. Maya, we've never acted superior to you. We include you in everything. We invite you to every family event. You invite me, so I can sit there and watch you perform, I interrupted. Every gathering is about celebrating Derek's latest sale or Vanessa's newest achievement, while I get to play the role of supportive family member who doesn't have anything interesting to contribute. Derek ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized from childhood whenever he was frustrated. That's not— Look, Maya, I'm sorry if you feel left out sometimes, but that doesn't give you the right to attack Vanessa like that. She's still in college, for crying out loud. She's trying her best. And I wasn't trying my best when I was in college. I wasn't trying my best when I graduated at the top of my class. The difference is that when Vanessa tries, she gets praised and encouraged. When I tried, I got told my degree wasn't a wise investment. That's different, and you know it. Derek's tone was getting defensive now. Art school is expensive and the job market is uncertain. Mom and Dad were being practical. Practical, I laughed bitterly. Is that what we're calling it? Because from where I stand, it looks like favoritism. You got your college paid for, Vanessa's getting hers paid for, and I got told to take out loans because my dreams weren't worth the investment. Maya, that's not fair. What's not fair is watching my parents fund your business degree while questioning the value of mine. What's not fair is coming to dinner after dinner where my career gets dismissed as a hobby, while yours gets treated like you're changing the world. You sell houses, Derek. You help people buy and sell real estate. It's a perfectly respectable job, but you're not performing surgery or solving world hunger. Derek's face was flushed now, his composure completely gone. At least what I do is straightforward. People understand it. I help families achieve the American dream of homeownership. That's meaningful work. And helping companies communicate with their customers isn't meaningful. Creating visual systems that help people understand complex information isn't meaningful. Building brands that connect with millions of people isn't meaningful. My voice was rising again. Or is it only meaningful when it fits your narrow definition of success? That's not what Derek started, but I cut him off. Yes, it is what you meant. You've made it crystal clear over the years that you think what I do is frivolous, making things pretty, playing with computers, not a real job. They've been sending me that message for years, and tonight I finally called you on it. Behind Derek, I could see the front door opening. Vanessa emerged, looking upset, followed by our parents. Stephanie hung back in the doorway, clearly wanting no part of this family drama. Maya, honey, please come back inside, Mom called out. Let's talk about this calmly. There's nothing calm about this, Mom, I called back. This has been building for years, and you all just ignored it. Vanessa walked down the driveway toward us, her eyes red from crying. Maya, I don't understand why you're so angry at me. I was just excited about school. I wasn't trying to make you feel bad. Looking at my little sister's confused, hurt expression, I felt a stab of guilt. But I also felt angry all over again because this was exactly how it always went. Vanessa would play innocent, Derek would act like he'd done nothing wrong, and I'd be expected to apologize for having feelings. Vanessa, I'm not angry at you for being excited about school, I said, trying to keep my voice level. I'm angry about the double standard. When you do well in a marketing class, you get praised for your strategic thinking. When I do marketing, strategy professionally, it gets dismissed as computer stuff. I never said that, Vanessa protested. You didn't have to say it. You just nodded along when Derek said it. You laughed when he called my job playing with computers. You've been going along with this for years, Vanessa, and that hurts. I didn't know it hurt you, she said quietly. How could you not know? How could any of you not know? Did you think I enjoyed being talked down to? Did you think I liked having my career dismissed? Dad had joined us now, looking uncomfortable. And out of his depth, Maya, I think there's been a misunderstanding here. We've always been proud of you. We know you work hard. Do you, Dad? Because when Derek works hard, you call him ambitious and successful. When I work hard, you tell me not to talk about it at dinner because it might take attention away from Derek's achievements. That's not what your mother meant. That's exactly what she meant. I was exhausted from having to explain this over and over. She literally told me not to talk about work tonight so we could focus on Derek. When was the last time anyone told Derek not to talk about his sales so we could focus on my projects? The silence that followed answered my question. Derek stepped closer, his expression softer now but still defensive. Maya, look, maybe we could have been more supportive, but you're making it sound like we're terrible people. We're your family. We love you. I know you love me, I said, and I could hear my voice starting to break. But love isn't enough. When it comes with conditions, You love me as long as I don't expect the same respect you give each other. You love me as long as I don't point out the unfairness. You love me as long as I play my role as the supportive sister who doesn't need validation. That's not true, Mom said, stepping forward. She looked genuinely distressed now. Maya, we do respect you. We're proud of what you've accomplished. Then why don't you show it? Why do I have to fight for basic acknowledgement of my achievements? Why do my successes get footnoted while Derek's get celebrated? Mom opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. For the first time all evening, she seemed to be really thinking about what I was saying. Derek, however, wasn't ready to back down. You know what, Maya? Maybe the reason we don't celebrate your job the way you want is because you're always so bitter about everything. You walk into every family gathering with a chip on your shoulder, waiting for someone to say something wrong. I have a chip on my shoulder because you put it there, I snapped. Years of dismissive comments, years of being talked over, years of watching you get credit for the same things I get ignored for? That chip didn't appear out of nowhere. Derek said this is all our fault. You bear no responsibility for the dynamic here. I stared at him for a long moment, feeling the weight of years of accumulated hurt and frustration. My only responsibility was staying quiet about it for too long. My only mistake was caring more about keeping the peace than standing up for myself. Vanessa was crying openly now. I don't want our family to be like this. I don't want us to fight. Neither do I said, and I meant it. But I can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's not. I can't keep coming to these dinners and feeling invisible in my own family. So what do you want from us? Derek asked, and for the first time, he sounded genuinely curious rather than defensive. I want you to see me, I said simply. Really see me? Not as the artistic sister or the creative one or the person who plays with computers. I want you to see that what I do is skilled, professional work that I'm good at. I want you to be curious about my life the way I'm curious about yours. I want to feel like I matter to you as much as you matter to me. The driveway fell quiet except for the sound of Vanessa's quiet crying and the distant hum of traffic from the main road. We all stood there for a moment, the weight of everything I'd said hanging in the air between us. Finally, Dad spoke up, his voice uncertain. Maya, I think maybe we haven't been paying attention the way we should have been. It wasn't much, but it was the first acknowledgement I'd heard all evening that maybe, just maybe, I had a point. I'm going to go home now, I said quietly. I need some time to think, and you all probably do too. Maya, wait, Mom said. Don't leave like this. Let's figure this out. There's nothing to figure out tonight, Mom. Tonight was about finally telling the truth. What happens next? That's up to all of us. I got in my car and drove away, leaving my family standing in the driveway looking confused and hurt and maybe, for the first time in years, like they were really thinking about how they'd been treating me. The confrontation was over, but I had no idea what would come next. The next few days passed in a strange, suspended silence. No one called, no one texted, and the family group chat that usually buzzed with Derek's sales updates and Vanessa's college stories remained completely quiet. It was as if we'd all agreed to pretend the dinner had never happened, except for the fact that we were all very obviously thinking about nothing else. I threw myself into work, staying late at the office and taking on extra projects to keep my mind busy. The startup rebrand was launching the following week, and I had presentation materials to prepare for the client meeting. Every time I worked on it, I thought about Derek's dismissive comments about nonprofits and tight budgets, and I felt a fresh wave of anger mixed with satisfaction. This project was not only well-funded, but was also getting attention from major investors and education policy experts. It was exactly the kind of meaningful, high-profile work that should have made my family proud. On Wednesday, James knocked on my office door. You've been here until 9 every night this week. Everything okay? I looked up from my computer, realizing I'd been staring at the same design for 20 minutes without actually seeing it, just trying to stay busy. Family stuff? James had worked with me for 3 years, long enough to recognize when I was dealing with personal drama. You could say that. I saved my work and leaned back in my chair. I finally told my family what I really think about how they treat me. About time, James said, settling into the chair across from my desk. I've heard you talk about your brother and sister enough to know they don't appreciate what you do here. It didn't go well. Or maybe it went exactly how it needed to go. I'm still not sure what happened. I found myself telling James the whole story. The years of dismissive comments, the double standards, the celebration dinner that had turned into a confrontation. As I talked, I realized how good it felt to have someone listen without trying to fix things or minimize my feelings. Sounds like you said what needed to be said, James concluded when I finished. That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't. But I keep going back and forth between feeling proud of myself for finally speaking up and feeling guilty for hurting my sister. Vanessa looked so confused and upset. She's 22, right? Old enough to start thinking about how her actions affect other people? You're not responsible for protecting her from the consequences of participating in behavior that hurt you. That was something I'd been struggling with. Vanessa had always been my baby sister, and my instinct was to protect her from conflict. But James was right. She wasn't actually a child anymore, and she'd been old enough to choose not to participate in Derek's dismissiveness. On Thursday evening, my phone finally buzzed with a text from Mom. "Maya, honey, can we talk? I've been thinking about what you said." I stared at the message for several minutes before responding. "I'm free this weekend if you want to come over. How about Saturday afternoon? I'll bring coffee." Okay. It was a start. At least Friday brought an unexpected text from Vanessa. "I know you're probably still mad at me, but I wanted you to know I've been thinking about dinner. I'm sorry if I made you feel bad. I didn't realize." I read the message several times, trying to parse whether this was genuine reflection or damage control. Finally, I wrote back, "I appreciate that. We should talk soon. Can I call you this weekend? Sunday afternoon would be good." Derek, predictably, remained silent. Saturday afternoon, Mom arrived at my apartment carrying a tray of coffee from my favorite cafe and looking nervous. She'd never come to my place alone before. Usually, family visits were group affairs at my parents' house, with Derek and Vanessa dominating the conversation while Mom fluttered around playing hostess. "Your apartment is really lovely," she said, looking around at the framed prints on my walls and the carefully chosen furniture. "I never really noticed before how put together everything is." "Thank you." I gestured for her to sit on the couch. "I've been working on it slowly, buying pieces I really love instead of just filling space." Mom settled into the corner of the couch, holding her coffee cup like a shield. "Maya, I owe you an apology." Several apologies, actually. I wasn't sure what I'd been expecting, but it wasn't that. "Mom, no. Let me say this. I've been thinking about Tuesday night all week, and I've been thinking about a lot of other things too. About your graduation, about your promotion, about all the times you tried to share something exciting with us, and we, didn't respond the way we should have." I felt a lump forming in my throat. "I just wanted you to be proud of me." "Oh, honey, we are proud of you. I am proud of you. But I realize now that being proud isn't enough if you don't show it, and I haven't been showing it." Mom set down her coffee and turned to face me fully. "I've been thinking about what you said about the loans, about us paying for Derek's school and Vanessa's school, but not yours. At the time, your father and I told ourselves we were being practical, but I think we were being unfair. I think we made assumptions about your degree that we shouldn't have made. It hurt," I admitted, feeling like my education was less valuable than theirs. "I can see that now, and I can see how that set a pattern where we've continued to treat your career as less important than theirs. You were right about Tuesday night. I did tell you not to talk about work because I wanted Derek to have his moment. But Derek gets to have his moment at every family gathering. When was the last time we had a gathering to celebrate something you accomplished?" I thought about it and realized the answer was never. "We haven't. No, we haven't. And that's not okay." Mom's voice was getting stronger, more determined. "I don't know how we got into this pattern, but I want to change it. I want to understand what you do, really understand it. I want to know about your projects and your clients and what makes you excited about your work." For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe properly. That would mean a lot to me. "Can you tell me about this startup project you mentioned?" I could tell you were excited about it, but then Derek started talking about budgets and I got distracted trying to keep the peace instead of listening to you. So I told her. I explained the company's mission, the research they'd done on educational inequality, the comprehensive rebrand strategy I'd developed. I showed her the logo designs, the color palette, the messaging framework. I talked about the potential impact, the client's vision, the technical challenges of creating a visual identity that would work across digital platforms and print materials. Mom listened intently, asking questions that showed she was really paying attention. "This is incredible, Maya. This is exactly the kind of work that could change children's lives. How do you even begin to create something like this?" I found myself getting animated as I explained my design process, the user research, the competitive analysis. It felt amazing to have someone in my family genuinely interested in the work I did, asking follow-up questions, understanding the complexity and skill involved. "I had no idea," Mom said when I finished. "I mean, I knew you were talented, but I didn't understand the scope of what you do. This is business strategy and psychology and art all combined together. That's exactly what it is. That's what I've been trying to tell you all for years. Mom was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was sad. We really failed you, didn't we? Derek and Vanessa, and your father and me? We just ... we didn't see. I don't think you meant to, I said. But yes, it's been hard feeling invisible in my own family. What can we do to fix this? I know it's not going to change overnight, but I want to try. I thought about her question seriously. I think it starts with recognizing that all of our careers are valid and valuable in different ways. Derek helps people buy homes. Vanessa is learning business skills, and I help companies communicate with their audiences. None of those is more important than the others. You're right. Absolutely right. And I think it means being curious about each other's lives, asking questions, celebrating successes, offering support during challenges. The same way you've always done for Derek and Vanessa. Mom nodded earnestly. I want to do that. I want to be the mother you deserve. It wasn't going to solve everything immediately, but it was a genuine start. For the first time in years, I felt like my mother was really seeing me as an adult, with a valuable life and career, rather than just her artistic daughter who needed gentle management. There's something else, Mom said as she was getting ready to leave. Derek and Vanessa need to hear this too. And your father, we all need to do better. I hope they're willing to listen. They will be. I'm going to make sure of it. After Mom left, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time. When it came to my family, hope, it was going to take time and effort from everyone involved, but maybe, just maybe, we could build something better from the wreckage of Tuesday night's dinner. The confrontation had been painful, but it was starting to look like it might have been necessary to. Sunday afternoon brought the phone call from Vanessa that I'd been both anticipating and dreading. When her name appeared on my screen, I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Hey, she said, and I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. Is this still a good time to talk? Yeah, it's fine. How are you doing, honestly? Pretty confused and kind of embarrassed. Vanessa's voice was quieter than usual, missing its typical confidence. I've been thinking about what you said Tuesday night, and I've been thinking about ... Well, a lot of things. I settled into my favorite chair by the window, watching the late afternoon light filter through the leaves of the oak tree outside. What kinds of things about how we talk about your job? About how I talk about your job? She paused, and I could hear her take a shaky breath. Maya, I don't think I ever really thought about what you do. Like, really thought about it? I just kind of went along with whatever Derek said. Why do you think that is? Because it was easier, I guess. Derek's always been so sure of himself, so confident about everything, and you never really fought back before, so I thought maybe he was right. That maybe what you do isn't as, I don't know, as serious as what he does. The honesty in her admission was painful but refreshing. And now I feel really stupid. Mom showed me some of your work yesterday, the stuff you're doing for that education company. Maya, it's incredible. It's art. But it's also business, strategy, and psychology and all these things I'm studying in school, but you're actually doing professionally. I felt a familiar warmth in my chest, the same feeling I'd had when Mom had shown genuine interest. In my work, thank you for saying that. I should have said it years ago. I should have asked you about your projects and been excited for your successes instead of just nodding along when Derek called it computer stuff. Vanessa's voice was getting stronger now, more determined. I was being a follower, and that's not who I want to be. Vanessa, you're 22. You're allowed to make mistakes and learn from them. What matters is that you're thinking about it now. I want to understand what you do. Really understand it. Would you be willing to tell me about your work sometime? Like actually explain it to me instead of me just pretending to get it. I would love that, I said, and I meant it. And Maya, I'm sorry about the graduation thing, and the promotion thing, and probably 100 other things I didn't pay attention to. I want to be a better sister. By the time we hung up 20 minutes later, I felt like I'd gotten my little sister back, not the college student who followed Derek's lead, but the thoughtful, curious person I'd always known she could be. Derek. Took longer. It was Thursday of the following week when he finally called, and his tone was different from Vanessa's apologetic uncertainty. He sounded tired and a little defensive, but there was something else there too, something that might have been genuine reflection. I've been talking to Stephanie about what happened, he said without preamble. She thinks I owe you an apology. What do you think? Derek was quiet for a moment. I think maybe I've been a bigger ass than I realized. It wasn't the most eloquent apology I'd ever heard, but coming from Derek, it felt significant. Tell me more about that. Look, Maya, I know I can. Intense about success and achievement. I've always been competitive, always wanted to be the best at whatever I was doing. And somewhere along the way, I started thinking that meant other people's achievements didn't matter as much, including mine, especially yours, apparently. He sighed heavily. I kept telling myself that what I do is more important because it's more traditional, more easily understood. But Stephanie pointed out that I was basically saying that anything I don't understand isn't valuable, which is pretty arrogant. It is pretty arrogant, I agreed, but without malice. Yeah, I'm getting that now. And the thing is, I do think you're talented, Maya. I've always thought that. But I guess I didn't think talent in creative fields was as legitimate as talent in business. Why not? Derek was quiet for a long time, and when he spoke again, his voice was more honest than I'd heard it in years. Because I don't understand it. I can't do what you do. I can sell houses because I understand people and I understand market dynamics. But I could never create something beautiful or meaningful from nothing. And instead of respecting that, I dismissed it. It was the closest thing to a real apology I was likely to get from Derek. And it addressed the core issue better than I'd expected. I appreciate you saying that. I want to do better, Maya. Want to understand what you do, and I want to stop being such a, what did you call me? An arrogant ass? I don't think I used those exact words, but close enough, I could hear a slight smile in his voice. So, can we try again? Can you tell me about this education project you're working on? For real this time, not just so I can find ways to diminish it. So I told him, the same way I'd told Mom and Vanessa. And Derek listened, really listened, asking thoughtful questions about brand strategy and target demographics and market positioning. Questions that showed he was applying his business knowledge to understand my work rather than dismissing. This is a lot more complex than I realized, he admitted when I finished. You're basically creating the entire identity and personality of a company. That's actually really impressive. Thank you. And I'm sorry for calling it making things pretty. That was reductive and unfair. It was. I'll do better. We'll do better, all of us. The conversation with Dad was shorter but equally meaningful. He called Friday evening, his voice gruff with emotion that he was clearly trying to control. Maya, your mother tells me I owe you an apology, and she's right. We haven't been fair to you, and I'm sorry. Thank you, Dad. I want you to know that. We're proud of you. We've always been proud of you. We didn't show it right, and that's on us, not on you. It was simple and direct, which was Dad's way, but it was exactly what I needed to hear. I love you, kiddo, and I'm going to do better at showing it. I love you too, Dad. 3 weeks later, I walked into my parents' house for another family dinner, but this one was different. This one was to celebrate the launch of the educational technology platform I'd helped rebrand. Mom had made my favorite meal instead of Derek's, and the conversation centered around my project. Instead of Derek's latest sales, Derek asked intelligent questions about the client's user acquisition strategy. Vanessa wanted to know about the design process and how I'd chosen the color palette. Dad listened intently as I explained the company's mission and the potential impact on educational equity. It wasn't perfect. Years of family dynamics don't change overnight, but it was better. So much better. I'm proud of you, Maya, Mom said as we cleared the dinner dishes. This project is going to help so many children. Thanks, Mom. That means a lot. It should have meant a lot years ago, too. But better late than never, right? Right? As I drove home that night, I reflected on everything that had changed since that explosive dinner 3 weeks ago. The confrontation had been painful, but it had forced all of us to examine patterns we'd fallen into without thinking. It had created space for honest conversation and genuine change. I was still the graphic designer in the family, still the creative one, but now I was also the sister whose work mattered, whose achievements were celebrated, whose professional expertise was respected and valued. Sometimes, the most important conversations are the hardest ones to have. Sometimes you have to be willing to break something before you can build it back better. And sometimes, standing up for yourself is the most loving thing you can do. For yourself and for the people who care about you enough to listen and change. I wasn't the family disappointment anymore. I wasn't the overlooked middle child. I was Maya, the graphic designer who helped companies tell their stories and connect with their audiences. I was Maya, who landed prestigious clients and created work that made a difference in the world. I was Maya, and my family could finally see me for who I really was. Looking back, I realized that asking Aita for dissing my brother and sister was the wrong question. The right question was whether I was justified in finally demanding the respect and recognition I deserved from the people who were supposed to love and support me unconditionally? And the answer to that question was yes. Absolutely yes. Sometimes you have to diss your siblings to save your family. Sometimes you have to break the silence to break the patterns that are hurting everyone involved. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to accept being treated as less than you are. That night at dinner, I wasn't trying to hurt my brother and sister. I was trying to save my relationship with them and with myself. I was trying to create space for something better, something more honest, something more loving than what we'd had before. It worked. We're better now, all of us, and that's worth every uncomfortable moment of telling the truth after listening to today's story. Perhaps it has raised some new questions in your mind. Every day on Reddit, new experiences and moments create fresh stories. We are all human. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share it. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to keep an eye out for more stories coming soon.